The soul is the manifestation of consciousness. It appears that we are separate beings, but if you talk about awareness and consciousness, we all are one. We all are connected through this common field. And so the body seems to be separate, our mind seems to be separate, but who we are deep down is not separate. So that is like a single infinite consciousness. But this single infinite consciousness manifests itself in multiple levels. So, in between these two states of our physical human body, including the mind and the body, and the state of pure awareness, there is this transition state in between, which is like that level of the soul. And in that level, and this is usually the state that is experienced, that goes through these multiple lifetimes, and in reincarnate. So your soul can reincarnate in many different forms, but what your soul is at the root will always remain the same.
Hi, welcome to The Way of the Heart. Today's conversation is with Saqib Rizvi. He is a spiritual mentor drawing insights from traditions like Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Christian mysticism, and many more. He remains a student of mysticism, blending intellect, emotional intelligence, and ethereal awareness to elevate consciousness. I loved this conversation, and I hope you do as well. Sakib, welcome to The Way of the Heart.
Thank you for inviting me, Nati.
I had mentioned this before we started recording, and I feel like I know you. I know your voice for sure. I feel like I have to share with the listeners that you have a bunch of different beautiful resources out there. Specifically, the way that I know you is through the meditations that I have done and I listened to on the app Insight Timer. That is mainly the app that I use for my meditations, both guided meditations and silent meditations. And I came across your meditations and I just love them so much. So I feel like there's a part of me that knows you by listening to that. So I'm incredibly excited to have you here and for the audience to be able to have the experience of who you are.
Thank you so much, and I'm really excited for this. As I said, I think before we started this call, was that when you sent me that invitation, and I looked up your Instagram profile and what you were doing, and like the Way of the Heart. I think this is something we absolutely need. These kind of podcasts, and like talking from the heart, because I feel the heart is like the most underrated organ in our body, and it has so much of power. And I'm really, really honored to be here with you and talking about this and having that discussion around that. Although I would love to go with the free flow and whatever you feel like exploring, but I feel that the heart, just the title of your podcast really, really excited me.
Thank you. Yeah, I recently was writing a couple, branding, copy, texts for the website and to invite people to the podcast. And something that came up was, who am I and what does the heart have to do with that question is the North Star of the conversations. So that's kind of like what sparked curiosity in me to start researching, remembering, recognizing things about myself and who I am. But the heart was always there. So it's definitely going to guide our conversation. So I'm glad that resonated. And I feel like every time that I have reached out to someone, it has been intuitively guided, because I can only know so much about someone that I've never talked to. But there's an intuition there, that there's something that, there's a resonance. And when all I knew about you was the meditations that I had listened to. And then after one meditation that I did, and it was a guided meditation by you. It was like so clear to me that I was like, I really want to have a conversation with him for the podcast. And then I went on your website and I went on Instagram and I was like, oh yeah, there are so many things that we can talk about. So I'm really excited to dive deep into those questions that I have for you. And before we begin with those very, direct questions, I would love to know more about you and maybe your history, where you were born, where you were raised, and basically what shaped Sakib today.
It's a beautiful way of asking that question, because I have been on other podcasts, and usually, although every interviewer has their own beauty and value, what I notice is that mainly this question becomes kind of like a mechanical thing, as if we are a formality, like we are fulfilling a formality. But the way you asked it, I think it's really coming from the heart, because you asked about my birthplace of origin, and nobody has asked that yet. And you also asked about like how my journey shaped me. So thank you for putting it that way. So I was born in India, and that's why actually also I'm wearing this Indian kind of traditional dress. It's called a kurta. And I thought that because I originally come from India, so I'll wear this today for the podcast. But I now live in Canada, and I'm a Canadian citizen now. But originally I was born in India, and so I was born in the capital city, New Delhi. And like how I am here today is like there is a long story to that. But to put it in short, I would say that initially my journey has been mainly about for the first, I would say, like 25 years of my life, it had been about religion. And it was shaped by religion. As you might know, that India is very diverse, and it has so many religions. I belong to I practiced Islam for like the first 20, 24, 25 years of my life. And that was kind of my identity at that point of time. And at some point of time I realized that there is so much more beyond religion that I need to explore. And I kind of gave up that identity. And that's where I started exploring the really spiritual aspects of India, because earlier I was like limited to a particular religion, and that also limited me from exploring like the diversity of India, because India is full of diversity. There are so many religions, there are so many spiritual traditions. It's like the spiritual kind of a spiritual birthplace of the world, because like great teachers have come from India, including the Buddha. And so I went to the Himalayas. As usually the spiritual stories are people go to the Himalayas and they meditate, and I did that. And I got trained informally in Mahayana Buddhism. And that's where I started exploring these different aspects of India: Buddhism, Hinduism, and all these different aspects. And then I worked at an Osho center, so that was also a different. I worked there for 2 years, and that was also a different experience. So really, just before coming to Canada for a few years, I was, that's when I became a meditation teacher back in India, and it has been like almost 7 to 8 years now. I came to Canada 5 years ago, but that period of 2-3 years was kind of the defining time for me, or kind of what shaped my, what I'm doing right now. And so eventually I moved to Canada because I realized that a lot of, as I started working as a meditation teacher, a lot of people who worked with me were in the West. And at that time, India was not really giving value to meditation, because it's something like, when something is your birthplace, meditation and yoga is the birthplace, and is the India is the birthplace of meditation and yoga. And when that is the case, then you don't really value that too much. It's as if like you take it for granted. And so I saw that there is not much value. Actually, there is more value in the West. So why not move to the West? So I actually then moved to Canada. And since then I have been exploring further and deeper into various traditions. So now my spiritual exploration is not limited to even Indian or Eastern traditions, but also Western traditions and like traditions from all over the world. So this is what has shaped my journey, and lo and behold, I'm sitting here in front of you.
I love all of the exploration. To me, I feel like at heart, I am such a curious person that just like hearing that someone is in that journey just makes me excited. Because in a way, I've done that in my own style, just kind of like in a computer, books, podcasts. But for the most part, I've stayed in the same place. I did grow up in Colombia. I did not grow up religious at all. Although I recently was talking about this, I always had this very curious yet very skeptic approach to religions. I've been fascinated with like different ones. In fact, one of the very first books that I remember I had when I was a child and I was very interested in was like this red tiny book that was about the main religions in the world. And I was a child, and I don't know why that was so interesting to me. And there was nothing around me that was, kind of like calling me towards that path. And it was years later, maybe 10 years later, now that I'm here in the US, that I've been so curious about exploring different spiritual traditions. And I feel like this that you are talking about really, perhaps I may be wrong. I would love to hear your side of this, because this is something that you talk about, which is spiritual freedom. What is the concept of spiritual freedom, if you can explain it, or maybe you already explained it with your own path?
Yeah, it's something like what what you just said about yourself and your own journey, that you were like excited by this red book, and you were excited by all these religions and these different spiritual traditions. It's precisely that, because spiritual freedom is basically the idea that I am not like limited to a certain perspective or certain mindset or a certain way of living. I open myself, to various different aspects. I kind of allow myself that freedom, because, and so we think that we give ourselves freedom. We think that we are free, but usually we are conditioned. So we might be conditioned by a particular religion. We might be conditioned by a particular way of living, and that might be a 9 to 6, kind of 9 to 6 job living. We might be conditioned by a certain way of family life, although family life is wonderful, but a certain way of family life, which can also potentially limit people if the family is not supportive or constructive, or it has destructive patterns. So spiritual freedom is really to see that what are those areas of my life which are kind of limiting me in my full expression of a human being, full potential, and kind of like opening of the heart. So if my heart is closed due to that conditioning, or due to societal expectations, or due to parental expectations, due to part expectations of my partner, or due to expectations of the religious preacher, or due to the expectations of my corporate boss, then I limit my life. If I can live at 100%, I only live at 20%. So spiritual freedom is like increasing from that 20% and going up to at least 75%, so that we can start living more from an authentic place.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that is a quest that I've been really navigating. And like you said, I think the way of the heart is basically learning how to peel those layers of conditioning that we've had. And we all have them in different ways, and it manifests in different areas of our lives. And I feel like before I used to see that process or the conditioning itself as something very negative. And of course, for some people, may be something very negative. The experience of that may be very heavy, very painful. Yet I feel like there is so much joy that we discover in that process. And I feel like we are on this planet with this very specific way to go about learning that I feel like it's the whole point, right? To have like this game that is kind of like blocking our understanding or our ability to see our full expression, how you said it, or the possibility of our full expression. And then the game is precisely to like find the way in which I can really find my authentic voice and self and really explore myself in that. There are a couple more things that I find really interesting of the work that you do. Another one that I feel is so in line with this process and the navigation of exploring is the ability to manage and regulate our emotions, because our emotions are really guideposts of any and all areas of our life. So what is the work that you do with emotional regulation? Why do you think it's important? Or, if you can speak to this in any way, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. So emotions are, one disadvantage of emotions is that emotions are invisible. And we as human beings, we are like very attached to visible things. We like touching things, we like tangible things, we like material things, we like touching, we like seeing. But and although that's beautiful, but one of the disadvantages of that is that whatever is intangible, whatever is not material, or whatever we cannot see or touch, we don't give importance to that in general. Although the world has started giving importance now more and more, and thankfully there is more awareness. But in general, we tend to avoid that. And so in the way I work with emotions, is my intention is to make those intangible emotions in a way tangible to the person whom I'm working with. And so it's all about really getting into your emotion. Like really, I think it's a cliched statement now, but it is very true that you need to fully feel to heal. You need to fully, go deep into that emotion, understand it, potentially even visualize it, potentially also give it a personality. Kind of like, for example, my if I see my fearful self, and fear, if that fear is the emotion, I see myself, I give it a personality. So I visualize it as someone who is trying to like hide under the blanket, or who's trying to like kind of lying down on the floor in a fetal position, kind of like very fearful, and just wants to hide, and just wants to bury itself in the blanket. And so that's kind of my visual of my fearful self. So when I have this visual, it becomes easier for me to work with this emotion. And so now I can talk to this emotion, I can have a conversation. So Carl Jung had this method of active imagination. And what he did was, he would make his clients like close their eyes and like start seeing certain images, and images would come up. And all these images were kind of what Jung called, archetypes or symbols. And they would come up, and they would, the patient would draw them and start also maybe having conversation with them. And so kind of similar practice of like visualizing your emotion, giving it a personality, and start talking to it like, okay, tell me, what, when did you come into my life? Like, for example, I'm asking my fear, when did you enter my life? What was that moment when I started fearing a lot? When did you, what are you trying to teach me? Most important question. What is it that you're trying to teach me? So, for example, I was once experiencing fear around finances, and I'm really bad in financial management. So I was having this fear around finances, and it told me that, I talked to it, okay, what are you trying to teach me? And it told me that you need to manage your finances better. That's what I'm trying to teach you. And that gave me an inspiration, and I started doing that, and that really helped. So there's always like a lesson that our emotion can give us. And then we one of the other questions that I ask is like, what is it that now what how can I channel you, How can I channelize you in the right direction? How can I channelize you in the right direction? And so it will tell me, okay, fear, for example, is an energy. Don't waste it. Usually we try to waste, like kind of suppress our emotions, and it's an energy that we are wasting by suppressing. But if we can learn to use it, for example, if we can learn to use that fear, we can really do wonders, because it's an energy, it's a life force. It's in the lower chakras, but we can make it rise to the upper chakras. And when we do that, then now I can use my fear to like really work smarter, harder, be more productive, for in this example, and like really manage my finances really well then. And so emotions, I feel, are like a great energy source. But when we suppress them, we kind of waste that energy, or we try to fight against that energy, and we drain ourselves. But when we allow to fully face them and have a conversation with them and use them in the right direction, then they can be really a blessing. Every emotion, be it pain, be it fear, be it joy, every emotion becomes a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things come to mind. One of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movie, is Inside Out. You know that movie?
No, I haven't.
So it's a Pixar movie,
okay,
in which every emotion is a character. So they just came out with the second movie, actually. And the first movie had anger and joy and disgust, and I think fear was one of them. And then the second movie has anxiety and boredom and whatnot. I absolutely love that movie because the method that you are talking to is something that I find incredibly helpful for myself, especially with fear and anger, which are two emotions that are very dominant in my life. And I feel like that, many people can relate to that. And I'm thinking another thing about what you're talking to, which is meditation, which of course I already mentioned that this is how I know you. So I do have a question about that. But I wanted to also share something similar to what you shared with us, your own experience about finances. I recently had an experience in which I was really I was experiencing a lot of anger. And there was a moment that I was like, I need to go do a meditation because I really need to sit with this and see it for what it is and feel it, because otherwise I am going to yell at someone. I am going to take it out on someone. I am feeling the anger, the heat, the energy that you're talking to. So I sat with it and I had such a clear message, just like what you said, such a clear message of the next step that I needed to take with that fear, where that anger was guiding me towards. And it took courage to take that step. And there was another visual that came with that, which was a cave with a lot of bats flying. And I knew in that moment that anger and that step that I knew I needed to take was really digging into something that had been in like the shadow and like in the dark for me, and it was ready to come out. And I don't think that if I had done that, if I had sat with that anger, if I had really looked at it and really felt it, it would have been so clear to me what to do. And then because it was so clear that it was something that was seeing the light, that I really needed to take care of that. And I really needed to, embrace that and give it love and really, navigate it in that way. So I love the example that you gave, and also the fact that you work with people in this way, because all I do is like really talk about it with my friends, but I don't really know how to work with people. So I really love the fact that, that you're working with people in this way. Which takes me to, how do you weave meditation in this process?
So, meditation, there are various forms of meditation, and one is more like a meditation which is a pure awareness meditation. Like our intention is to like not think anything. Our intention is to not have any visuals. We just want to, which is usually done through various Buddhist practices. And one of those is known as Vipassana, in which you just observe your breath, you observe what is happening in this very moment. But there are meditations which are more therapeutic meditations, like this one that we are talking about, or there are meditations for different other practices like manifestation, shadow work. You talked about the shadow, inner child healing. But in this case, we are talking about like a visualization practice, almost like very similar to what inner child healing is, and using those visuals to heal oneself. So like if I have to, whatever I said, if I have to put it down in a meditation process, what we do initially, we get into a state of that calm and centeredness and presence, and we get into that state of pure awareness. Because if we start this practice before calming down ourselves, then we won't be able to attend to our emotions from a place of presence. Like it will be a kind of a battle. So first we want to calm down, rest ourselves, relax, do a mindfulness meditation practice, and then we start kind of bringing these visuals into the picture. Now, whenever I have to visualize something, I usually focus a lot on the third eye chakra, and because that chakra is like a powerful, like that's usually the chakra for clairvoyance. And so it's a good idea, if to do any visualization practice, to first maybe meditate a little bit on the third eye chakra. That would enhance your capability of visualization. And then then I do like a visualization practice. So as I said, I would create a visual of this, emotion of mine, and that emotion might be, as I said, it might be fear, it might be, as you said, anger, or it might be something else. But we kind of give it a personality, almost like visualizing our inner child, and then kind of just asking these a few questions, kind of a journaling practice without journaling, in which you just reflect on these questions, and you ask this question to your, to this emotional self of yours, and you stay in silence and kind of let those answers arise, or let that emotional self of yours answer you that. And then after this process of asking questions is done and reflecting is done, we also kind of release then, and we come back to, like, because a lot of emotions might have built up, a lot of, some chaotic energy might have built up. So we kind of then do a grounding practice, a little bit of like Reiki work really helps here, in which, or maybe chakra work, which grounds you, and you you release that energy from, from your body, which has built up. So usually what I do is I kind of do a breathing practice, in which I like breathe in white light and I breathe out like black smoke. And although like there is nothing negative about this emotion, and usually we tend to give a negative connotation to black, but there is no negative connotation to black. So I just release that through a black smoke, release that energy, whatever I need to, take in myself, that healing, that blessing, that love, I breathe in through white light, and I release that out through release the emotion that I want to let go of, through the black smoke. Because letting go of that emotion is also important. Usually we are also attached to our like pains and fears and sadness, and we might have like various investments in it. For example, there was this someone I was working with, and she did a lot of sessions with me, and she's a wonderful person. She's amazing. But one thing that she did not realize, and that was unconscious for her, was that she was really attached to her being in a mental, in a state which was not a healthy state of mental health. Why? Because she was getting a grant from the government, and if she was mentally healthy, she would not get that grant. So we have like our many unconscious attachments, and and that was when we realized that, and then we worked on that, and she was able to liberate that. And so I think we have to also see that what is my unconscious attachment to this emotion. Sometimes it might also be like sympathy, getting sympathy from others due to this attachment to my emotions. So then it's very important through meditation to release that by doing this grounding practice. So this is kind of the like a process that I follow in doing this meditation, and it has worked. It has been helpful, although every person is different, and every person, there will be a customization based on the experience of that person. But more or less, this is the process for me.
I find the visualizations very helpful. Like you said, even just to what you said at the beginning, we give so much value to what we can see and touch. So visualizations for me provide that, especially when it's like that contrast, when it has that polarity of like, okay, I'm breathing in light and then I'm letting go of like smoke, which to me, the way that I've been I guess analyzing that or giving it some type of logic is smoke to me is the after the kind of like the byproduct of fire, right? And fire, it transmutes energy. So to me, it's almost like the sign that whatever I was doing internally has been transmuted and I'm letting go of that. So I do love working with that visualization. And I probably learned it from your meditations. Who knows? I've been meditating with your guidance for a while now. So I do love that. You talked about the unconscious, and I do know that that is something that you work with a lot. And in many different schools of thought, the unconscious, subconscious, superconscious is seen in different ways. How do you work with these concepts?
I mainly kind of relate to Carl Jung's teachings. And so the unconscious is anything that that we are not aware of in our daily experience. And a very basic example of that is our own blind spots. Like once I was having this excuse me, once I was having this like an interaction in a mastermind group, and that was like the first time I joined the mastermind group. And so what I was doing in that mastermind group, I was in a period of solitude for a long time, and in silence, and I did not speak for a long time. And as soon as I was a part of this mastermind group, I realized that I did not realize actually that I was speaking too much. And I was not letting others speak. It's like if I don't let you speak right now and I keep speaking. And I did not realize that was happening. So, but someone in the group pointed out that, that you are taking time from others and you're not letting others speak. And I was like, I didn't even realize that, because I was kind of in my own, I was not very aware of what's happening right now in the moment. I was not present at that time. So this is what unconsciousness is. Consciousness is being present, being conscious, being mindful, noticing what is happening, being not only aware of others but also aware of oneself. How am I behaving right now, or what is happening in me? And anything that we are not aware of is unconscious. So I kind of give like an analogy to this, or a metaphor, if you will, which is of the ocean. Like the surface of the ocean is very easily accessible to us. It is like the conscious mind, and it has all those waves, and all that waves represent our thinking mind and thoughts. But then you go slightly deeper in the ocean, and you that middle level of the ocean is where it's much calmer. There is less activity. It's slightly difficult to get there. There is little bit of sunlight, so it's little bit dark there. So that's like the subconscious mind. And the difference between the unconscious and the subconscious is that the unconscious goes much deeper than the subconscious. Subconscious is something that you can easily become aware of, but unconscious is more difficult. So when you go at the deep level of the ocean, and especially deep sea divers would know that at the bottom of the ocean, or if you have seen those documentaries, at the bottom of the ocean, it's dark. It's totally dark. There are, and it's very difficult to get there. It's full of things that we don't know. There are many undiscovered species at the bottom of the ocean. And the unconscious mind is like that. There is so much undiscovered stuff, are in the unconscious, like what you were talking about, the shadow, for example. And it's difficult to access that. It's difficult to get there. So anything that is easily, for example, if I, our habits are subconscious. If I have a subconscious nail biting habit, for example, if you tell me that I'm biting my nails, I can easily become aware of that. But when it comes to my patterns, for example, my deep patterns, which usually are born in the childhood. For example, I have a pattern of judging people who are messy or unorganized. So I won't even realize that, or I won't even think that that is a problem. But maybe it comes from my childhood, where I was scolded by my parents because I was messy and unorganized. And so now that became my shadow, which resides in my unconscious. I don't even know. And now I judge people who are messy and unorganized. So unconscious habits kind of go deeper. So there are various ways to like work with the unconscious mind, and one of the most profound ways was what you mentioned, is shadow work. In fact, I just last week I ended a workshop on shadow work. It was a 3-month workshop. I also have a course on shadow work on Insight Timer. And shadow work has been like really powerful in doing that, getting into the unconscious mind. And I think for those who don't know what the shadow is basically the disowned part of us, the neglected part of us. And usually this happens because in the childhood we are judged by others due to certain things that we are judged for being loud, or we are judged for being too playful, or we are judged for these multiple different things, or being unorganized, as I said. And that becomes, because others hate that, we start hating that, and we suppress that, or the right word is repress that. And that becomes our shadow. And we don't realize that today our shadow lives inside us, and it defines us. It makes us live our life in certain ways. It affects our behavior, but we don't even realize that it's there. So that's kind of, the shadow is the disowned part of us.
Yeah. Yeah. There are so many topics, so many things that I find very interesting. I definitely find that for myself, a lot of things that were in my unconscious mind, because the nature of something that is in the unconscious mind or in that state is that we don't know it exists. A lot of times it is disguised as something else, and it may be part of our personality, and we are so attached to that personality that then we come across something that triggers us, and then we protect that even more. So it's almost like we're building more layers and more layers to protect that thing that is in the unconscious. So I think that to me, I remember when I started. So I initially started with this podcast doing solo episodes. And I remember at some point I mentioned that one of the things that always drives me into exploring things is whenever I resist something. Whenever I have a very physical, like just, it could be just like my mind, but when I'm like, no, I don't want to go there. With time, I'm like, why don't I want to go there? What is behind that I'm resisting this so much? And it's usually because, part of my identity or part of something that I've been, kind of like taking care of without knowing that is in that unconscious realm, is maybe going to be, kind of like given light to it. And then that means that I have to change. Then that means that my identity is going to transform. And that is very unstable for us human beings.
Yeah.
So it is definitely a very difficult process, which is why mainly I feel like the connection with the heart and all of the qualities of the heart, love, compassion, the warmth of, empathy, of giving space to people, I think it's so important, because this whole the process of shadow work, unconscious, everything that we've been speaking to, it's very difficult. It's very painful. And it really shakes us to our core. We have to really give death to an identity and then give birth to a new one in this whole process, which is very painful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you talked about solitude, which I know is something that you also mention a lot in your work. Why is it so important for you to really practice and to really be in solitude?
I would kind of rename it. I would call it temporary solitude. Is kind of important to really get away from the noise of the world. Like what you mentioned about, you just mentioned, and I really liked what you mentioned about like resisting, that what am I resisting? And I really need to go there. Now, how would we even ask that question if we are like busy in our, daily lives, if we are not finding time, if we are like, and that's how the society is structured, that we wake up in the morning, we are running, most people go to a 9 to 5 job and then come back in the evening, and people are tired, and spend a little bit time with the family and sleep, and then in the weekend we go for entertainment or vacation. And so like what you are doing, and you are inquiring having this inquiring your emotions, working on yourself, working on the heart, this requires space and time, and this requires, most importantly, that that also like an energy, like energetic boundaries with people. Although you might have space and time, but mentally someone might be taking your energy, and that is also a problem. Now, how solitude became really important for me, and before I go there, I want to ask you, how long were you in Colombia?
I was there up until I was 16 years old. And yeah, this goes in line with what you're saying, because
Yes.
I came here by myself when I was 16 years old. So I've had 17, 18 years at this point of being away from my immediate circle, which gave me that, the solitude that I needed to really reflect on who I was.
Yeah, and that's why that, about, I think, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. That difference between, and especially people like us who come from countries where there's a very strong social culture. Like, I come from India. Is that the same in Colombia?
Very similar. Yeah. Our family is not just, four. It's like the grandmother, the cousins, all of that. So yeah.
Absolutely. And so that, and in India, it's I'm not sure, maybe it's even more exaggerated, because there are like on a daily basis, there are like 100 people you meet. And every day there are guests coming to your house, and my father, he was very social, and so every day there will be guests in the house. And the relatives are like your own family, although they are distant cousins, but still they are like your own family. But now there is a beauty to that, because you feel supported all the time, you never get bored. But there is also a painful aspect to it, and it became really painful for me at some point of time, where I realized that, oh my God, I am not even myself. I'm not an individual. I am always driven by what others want of me. My father wants me to do this job. My mother wants me to get married. My relatives want me to get married. Some friend wants me to like do some business or something like that. I don't even know what I want. I don't have a separate identity. What do I want? I think that was the first question when I asked, and I realized I really need to explore this question. And so I realized that if I have to know that, I have to get away from the noise. I have to get away from everyone pulling me in different directions. And that's when, and that's why I also talk about spiritual freedom. That spiritual freedom also, solitude is a very important aspect of that spiritual freedom, because if I am constantly busy throughout the day, then, and in these relationships or work or anything else, I will never get time to grow. I will never get time to transform. That won't happen. And I will keep living my life in the same way, in the same cycle. And by the end of my life, I'm like, oh my god, I didn't do anything. I wish I followed my heart. I wish I had more time for myself. I wish I practiced more self-love. And so solitude, that's why, at least for a while, becomes really important. So personally for me, um, I decided, and one of the reasons, another reason for moving to Canada was, Canada is a lonely country, as you might know. There's enough solitude in Canada, and I decided to, I thought, okay, Canada might be a good place to go if I really want to experience solitude. Uh, and so I moved to Canada, and initially, for a few years, I was in that solitude time when I was telling you that after I came back from that solitude, I was speaking a lot. But initially, for that period of 2-3 years, I was really, really deep into solitude. And my greatest transformation happened in that time. I became an individual. I started knowing that what I really want to do. I continued with being a meditation teacher, which I really wanted to do, although my family was not okay with that. um, I decided that marriage is not for me. I decided that long-term partnership is for me, but marriage is not for me. I decided that this I want to live my life as a wanderer, wandering mystic. I want to travel a lot. I want to I want to live my life my own way, and there is value in that. I don't want to subscribe to anybody else, and this is who I am. This is what my identity is. I really want to follow my heart. So all that happened within that span of 2-3 years. I kind of rediscovered myself, and that's why, like, solitude becomes a ground for self-awareness. Solitude becomes a ground for self-discovery, and really knowing what is it that your heart wants. What, not what society wants, but what is it that your heart really wants. But a caution to that is that that can become addictive, and you can go to the other extreme, and we can get disconnected from people. So that also happened for me, and I realized that I'm becoming too extreme. Ultimately, life is about connection. Ultimately, life is about sharing, loving, and having wonderful relationships. And I had to overcome that addiction of, like, solitude to really get back. So, like, for the last couple of years, more importantly, I've been connecting more and more. And I have realized that ultimately it's about creating that balance, that you need time in your solitude, but you also need time to connect. And if you can create a balanced life around that, I think that's a beautiful life to have.
Yeah, I relate that to that in so many levels because I've had a very similar experience in which I came from Colombia, which again, very social. Although my family was not super social, like you're talking about, relatives every day, and like it was not like that. But there's definitely, my identity was definitely created pretty much shaped by what I was hearing, my mom say I was. Specifically for me, it was that I was a very rude, kind of like a rebel, angry person. And I came here to find out that, oh, that was not it. That was maybe aspects of myself that were, expressing during those ages for whatever reason. But the identity of who I am is like this rainbow of colors and expressions that couldn't be confined to one thing. And I was only able to find that through meditation, through having not even just meditation, but being by myself. And now as an adult, I'm like craving that connection, craving, connecting with people. But I do find that I really needed to go through that period of time in which I was finding myself to now be able to make space for people, to hold space for people to do that, and to be able to hold space for different expressions of life, right?
Yes.
Which, different human beings that may not be walking the same path that I'm walking. And I have the ability to have empathy, compassion, and love for them because I know that whatever their journey is really not for me to say, that's right or wrong, because I've walked my own journey and I've had the spiritual freedom to experience that. So I think that as you were talking, I'm like, yeah, the way of the heart also, could be defined as spiritual freedom for sure.
Absolutely. And so what in your case, um, what led you to have that transition from from Colombia to coming to US?
So I graduated from high school in Colombia, and the next step was, going to university. And in Colombia, you have to take a state test, and you need to have a certain score to go to the best schools. And in my circle of my friends, everyone was going to the best schools in Colombia, and I didn't get that number that I needed. And everyone was going to take the time to take the test again and study again. And for me, it was not even for me, it was like, I don't want to do that. And it happened that, just life kind of like had different plans for me. And I learned that here in Fort Lauderdale, there was a school that had the career that I wanted to take, that I wanted to do. And it was a private school that didn't really require anything that, Colombia was requiring of me. And I was privileged enough that, my father was able to pay for that. And I came here and I stayed here ever since. So that was kind of like my, the gift that life gave me to find myself again.
And the process of finding yourself again, did it happen immediately after you moved, or was it like a gradual self-discovery? What were those initial years for you?
It's been a gradual self-discovery. I love the way that you put it, because, from 16 to 20, maybe, I had 2 different relationships, like romantic relationships, in which that kind of like gave me my identity. And then I did not like that. And then from that, I learned what I didn't want in my life. And then it was, it's been interesting. It's interesting that you're asking me these questions, because I've journaled a lot, but it hasn't really come out a lot lately. But then I got married when I was 24. And our relationship has been so special in a way that we have given each other the space to really just like love each other, hold each other in the process of growth and expansion. And for me, the catalyst of like a huge way for me to learn about myself has been meditation as well. Meditation is, like you said, that space and the solitude of meditation, the moment in which I just connect to my heart, the moment I connect to my body, the moment I allow myself to meet my thoughts and get familiar with the thoughts and what I'm sustaining, the patterns become a little bit more clear. I recently read about a way in which Thich Nhat Hanh talks about meditation, and it's coming back to the appointment with life. And I love that. I heard that when I was in New York 2 weeks ago. And of course, we know how New York is. And I'm usually living a life that is completely opposite to that. Like, I am very ritualistic. Like, I wake up and I have my tea and I have my meditation and I go in a park and like I talk to the trees and I just do my thing. I do yoga. And then waking up in New York for 4 days in a row, or 3, whatever it was, it felt like a year. I was like, I really need to take the time. And then I put that meditation, and that's what it said, coming back to the appointment with your own life. And I was like, immediately, like tears just came out of my eyes, because that's how it feels to give myself that moment of silence, that moment of connection. It's just like really slowing down, like you said, to really meet myself and really ask the questions like, is this what I want? Is this what I don't want? And just quickly to kind of like wrap the question that you asked me, in 2020, when, life forced us in a way to just take a pause, that's when more things changed for me, because I had a company that I was running. for 7 years, and it was go, go, go all the time. And 2020 came. I specifically worked in the wedding industry. So that industry was kind of like totally on hold.
Yeah.
And that was the moment for me that I was like, okay, I like many of the things that I'm doing actually, but is this what I want? And it was only in that pause when I was able to really know that it was not, even though there are many aspects of it that I liked. But it was only in that pause of solitude that, that I really looked at it in, face to face. And I was like, yeah, this is not it.
So basically, COVID was like a blessing in disguise for you.
For me, yes. I was definitely blessed in a way that no one in my near circle, was affected, so deeply by it. Although, of course, the pain of the world in general, the many ways that it affected us, that was very painful. But it was a gift in a way that I was able to really face that thing that was planted in my heart that I didn't want it to see yet. And then that was it. I was like, okay, I cannot ignore this anymore.
Yeah, I think it was a wake-up call for so many people. And yeah, I think although you're right, it was very painful for the world, but also like, sometimes we need that pain to really awaken to our true self. And yeah, I think that's what happened with a lot of people.
Yeah. So another thing that has happened in the last few years, which is something that is related to a workshop that you're giving soon. So the workshop that you're giving is Accessing Past Lives. Is that the name, or Access Past Lives? Okay.
Accessing Past Lives, yeah.
Accessing Past Lives. I find this topic fascinating. I specifically have had a remembrance of a past life maybe in the last 2 years. So before, I guess I had read a book, One Soul, Many Bodies, I think it's the name, in which, I became familiar with the idea of reincarnation. Again, I didn't grow up religious or anything. So the idea of reincarnation was more of like a Western concept for me because I learned it here. But 2 years ago, I started having these memories, this visualization. So I find it fascinating. So I really want to ask you about this. Like, I want to ask you so many questions, but I think that to start, so that we all start from the same starting point, I feel like a good idea would be understanding what the soul is. Like, what is the soul in this, how does it play a role in this human life, in this meat suit that I have? Like, what is the soul?
So I'm glad before talking about past lives, you're talking about the soul, and that's a very good way to approach that. The soul is the manifestation of consciousness. So in my understanding, each one of us have our own understanding of like how we make sense of like our life, our world, our spirituality, where do we come from. I think everyone asks these questions. I don't think there is anybody who has not asked these questions, like where do I come from, who am I, where do I go, what happens after death, and these questions, and what is the soul, what is God. For me, my understanding, and after doing like this whole journey of discovery, and all those, it's still an ongoing process. I'm still discovering. In no way I know the answers perfectly. It's a process of discovery. But to me, there is a world of which is unmanifest, and there is a world that is manifest. So the unmanifest is that is that pure awareness, or that pure consciousness, or nothingness, which is the root of everything. It is, it's also like kind of a infinite consciousness that we all are a part of. There is, it's more of a non-dual understanding. There is a philosophy that comes from India. It's called Advaita, and Advaita, led to non-dualism. So Advaita itself means non-dualism, and the philosophy is that there is no dual, that there is only one. There is only one single being or non-being, single awareness, single consciousness. And what we see as the separate selves, me and you and everyone else, we are, this is just a like a manifestation, or this is just, the kind of an illusion, kind of uh, what appears to be so, but it is not so. So there's a difference between illusion and reality. What we are experiencing as the separation of the world is an illusion, is but it is real. It is arising. We know that it is real. You are sitting there, I'm sitting here, we know that we are talking to each other. It's not something that is, that is unreal. It is happening, but it is an illusion in the sense that it appears to be real, although deep down it is not. Deep down it is an illusion. uh, it appears that we, all of us, we are separate beings, but if you talk about awareness and consciousness, we all are one. There is no separation. There is no place where consciousness begins and ends, and this is what many people who have also like done scientific experiments on consciousness, they have found that actually, for example, and it's kind of a good synchronicity that the title of this podcast is The Way of the Heart. uh, Heart Math Institute, itself did like a research on this, and they found out that the heart has a like a magnetic field, electromagnetic. The heart has a excuse me. The heart has a electromagnetic field which connects to the magnetic field of the earth, and this magnetic field that is emitted by our heart, it they were able to measure it up to 6 to 7 meters. But the reason they were only able to measure it up to 6 to 7 meters, because that was the limitation of the instrument. The field is infinite. It connects to each one of our fields. We all are connected through this common field, and so the body seems to be separate. Our mind seems to be separate, but who we are deep down is not separate. So that is like a single infinite consciousness. But this single infinite consciousness manifests itself in multiple levels. So one level is the level what we are experiencing right now, what we call the physical human life. But in my understanding, there is a higher level, which would call the soul, or someone would call it the higher self, or someone would call it the astral plane. In Buddhism, it's known as the bardo state. In Egyptian mythology, it is known as the duat. And in Egyptian mythology, in fact, they have more segregations to different kind of souls and spirits. So they call it, the ba and the ka. And so the ka is like kind of the spirit that stays with the body, the energy body, but the ba is the soul that kind of transcends that energy body, and it travels in various dimensions of existence. So, in between these two states of our physical human body and physical human body, including the mind and the body, and the state of pure awareness, there is this transition state in between, which is like that level of the soul, or the bardo state, which the Buddhists call that. And in that level, and this is usually the state that is experienced, that goes through these multiple lifetimes, and in reincarnate. So your soul can reincarnate in many different forms, but what your soul is at the root will always remain the same. But it can take different various forms, and right now it's taking the form of Natalia in this lifetime.
I find this concept fascinating. So how does the idea of past lives come into play here? Like, what I know personally for me, what the remembrance of the past life I mentioned before has actually brought a lot of benefits. So what do you believe remembering a past life can bring to us?
Yeah. It has, even if it is, I know there is a lot of skepticism around like past lives, especially, I would say, especially more in the West, because the West has been, and the West, with the major religions of the West have been, Christianity, Judaism, Also the Middle East, because there is Islam there, and most Abrahamic religions do not have a concept of I would say all Abrahamic religions do not have a concept of multiple lifetimes. Apart from their mystical arms, every religion has a mystical arm, like Islam has Sufism, Judaism has Kabbalah, and Christianity has Christian mysticism. Apart from that, the main religion does not believe in the concept of multiple lifetimes. You die, you go to hell, heaven, purgatory. This is kind of what happens. So there is a lot of skepticism in the West. And so usually what happens is that people turn to atheism more, and that's like kind of a extreme. Although atheism, it's beautiful in its own way, but I feel that there is also an extreme form of atheism, which is known as militant atheism. And militant atheism is when you are sure that there is no God, when you are sure, you are not saying that I'm agnostic, you are not saying I'm doubtful or I will inquire, you're saying I'm sure there is no God. So that's kind of like two extremes. From one extreme of being too religious, we go to the, and this is what happened with me. Like I was very religious, and initially for 1 year I became a militant atheist, and for 1 year I was practicing militant atheism, very judiciously, and I had this strong belief there is no God. So what happens is that we tend to see that, okay, there is skepticism. I don't want to get there, and there are some people I talk to and they would say that, okay, I don't really want to get there, past life is not real, reincarnation is not real, I'm too skeptical. To that I would say that even if you don't believe in past life, that's absolutely okay. There is a certain, first of all, there is nothing wrong in exploring things. Exploration is good. Secondly, there is a lot of value in past life regression or accessing past lives. I do a different method than past life regression. I've created my own techniques, and these are like mainly based on Carl Jung's practices. And I would say that there is a lot of benefit to that. First of all, if we talk in terms of, let's say, someone who believes in past lives, or someone really knows, as you were talking about, I'm not sure if you believe or not, but you were talking about you had a remembrance. So someone who believes in a past life, their benefit will be that, okay, where do my talents come from, for example, right? So let's say, in my, as I was born, I was a natural, like a vocalist, and I used to sing. I never learned music, but I used to sing from my school band, my university band, my college band, and I used to sing well. And then now I use my voice in meditations, but still I'm using that. But I used to like properly sing before, and I never knew where does this come from, because I never learned music. And then I had a past life remembrance, and it was a dream. It came to me through a dream, and in that dream I was like this tall figure wearing a black robe, some other planet, some other dimension, and I was going into a university, almost like something like similar to Hogwarts, from Harry Potter. And in this university, there I was attending a music class, and the teacher was teaching music. And in this dimension, music was this, and this was the most fascinating part. The music was a physical thing. You could actually see music, and you could actually like play around. So this teacher of ours, she was like seeing this, she had this ball of light, and she would like rotate that, and it would start playing music, and she would turn it around, and it will play a different music. So music was a physical thing, you could actually see it. And so, and that dream ended, and when I woke up, I realized I had this like a very emotional feeling, as if like I was experiencing myself. And I realized this is not, this has a lot of, because I also saw myself singing in that dream, and I realized that this natural talent of singing actually comes from that particular lifetime. And that's why we have so many child prodigies. It's not even genetics, because many of those child prodigies do not have anyone in their fathers or forefathers, or their in their family who had that skill, but still they are a child prodigy in some other skill. So that is one benefit. Many other benefits are there, which is healing past life issues. A friend of mine, healing our own present life issues. A friend of mine, he had like abdominal pain, and he used to um have this severe pain, and he never found out what is the source of that pain. He went to every doctor. He since his childhood he used to have that pain. No doctor was able to find out where is that coming from. And so he did a past life regression, and we actually did it together at that time. And in that past life regression, he found out that in a very recent life he was stabbed multiple times in his stomach, and he died. And there was like a fight between two tribes, and he was like tied to a tree, and he was stabbed multiple times. And then the past life regressionist, he did some therapy around that, and after that session he never had that abdominal pain. It was gone, absolutely gone. And so that is another benefit. There is a lot of benefit in understanding relationships. Like I had a very conflicting relationship with my father. And after I did a past life regression, I did a past life meditation, and I remembered one of my recent lifetimes. I realized that he was also my father in that lifetime. And I realized that I had hurt him in that lifetime. And now, whatever hurt he was causing me in this lifetime was kind of my own karma. And it was also like kind of a agreement I had with him, like a soul agreement. Because my father, he, like, although very well intentioned and loving, but he kind of in his unconsciousness, he forced religion onto me, and he forced that those religious practices. And had he not done that, I would have never been fascinated with spirituality, because that passion for religion that he wanted to create it in me, I wanted to get away from that, and it turned to passion for spirituality. So the reason I am here today is because of my father. Had he not done that, I wouldn't have. So it was kind of a soul agreement that I had with him. So these are like more of the benefits for people can clearly see if the people believe in past lives or reincarnation. But someone who doesn't see that, they can still benefit from him. They can still like heal their relationships. They can still heal their personal issues. They can even connect to their past lives and get skills from that past life. There is a past life of mine, or I would call a parallel life of mine. And there is this woman who lives on another planet. She's a scientist on that planet, and that seems to be my past life. But I talk to her, I connect with her, and she has taught me a lot of concepts about science and quantum physics and black hole physics and space, which I did not know. Although I do have a science background, and I was an engineer, but I was really pathetic in my studies. I never studied in my university and college. But once I connected with this like science entity from another planet, she taught me a lot of things. I did not read so many. I did read a little bit books, but most of the things were taught by her to me. So you develop a lot of skills. And so like I can just go on and on, like the hundreds of benefits that are there to accessing past lives.
I'm very curious. Is this connection that you have with her, with this expression of you, how do you do that? Through meditation?
Yeah. So I would so I would share one of the techniques. For this, I will have to share a technique, and I will give away one of those techniques, which I'm going to actually teach in the workshop. And one of those techniques is based on Carl Jung's practice of what I was mentioning, active imagination. And I have created an enhanced practice of that, which is called active sensing, in which we kind of again bring up these characters into our awareness. And the best state to do that, Natalia, is, for me at least, is called a hypnopompic state. Now, what is a hypnopompic state? Hypnopompic state is when you just wake up in the morning. You are in between two realms. You are in between the waking world and the sleep world. And so what you do is there are ways to access that state consciously. But a lot of times what happens is I would see entities in that state. I would see like a different world in that state. I would see like a folklore entity, like a leprechaun. I would see an elf, or I would see some some power animal of the shamans. And I would also see this like like science lady from this other dimension, and she would start talking to me, and she would start giving me concepts and ideas which I had which I couldn't have found myself. And in that state, it became like a conversation. So I would ask her questions and she would give me answers, and I would ask her questions and she would give me answers. And that's how I formed kind of a relationship with her. Although like it feels like she's my past life, but because and I can go deeper into this. Time is an illusion. So actually, there is no past life. It's happening simultaneously in another dimension. So it's a parallel life. And so I'm already connected with her, and she would keep teaching me these concepts. And that has been really beneficial, like to the extent that I actually created a course on Insight Timer on quantum physics.
I recently saw that and I saved it. I bookmarked it. I was like, I really want to listen to this. I find all of these concepts fascinating. I do believe in past lives because I've had a very tangible experience of that.
If you don't mind, do you want to share that? If you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I don't mind. I actually shared some of it in another conversation that is still not out yet. But actually, I didn't really share how the first thing happened, which to me was through a meditation. I was doing a meditation. I was doing a guided meditation, and I'm very visual, so I do see a lot of things in my meditations. And even, as I talk, a lot of like the intuitions that I get, they all come through images. So even like, what to ask next or something, there's like a symbol, an image that comes to me. And in that specific meditation, there was something very unique to it that I saw a lot of people. And usually in my visualizations, it was always me in solitude. Going back to that, it was always me in a beautiful place, but there was never people around me. And this place was totally different. People, a lot of kids, there were a lot of animals, there was a lot of movement, water, like just a lot of life happening. And I shared with someone and she said, maybe that's Lemuria. And I was like, I've heard of this before, but I'm not sure what it is. And I went online, and the only things that we can find is art, of course, because this is an ancient civilization.
Yeah.
And there were a couple pictures, but one specifically, a painting that was exactly like what I saw in my visualization. So to me, that was like the first thing that was like, oh my God, like how is this happening? And then from that, there's been a couple things that have happened. Like after that, I got into this. I mean, I was so curious to know more. So I found a podcast of a lady that was called Maya the Shaman. And I was listening to what she had to say about Lemuria. And then I was like, I wonder who she is. I went to her Instagram. I looked her up. And then when I saw her pictures, I was like, I had a dream with this woman 2 weeks ago. And back then, I didn't used to remember my dreams. And that dream really stood out to me because it was so unique. She was telling me to remember something that I immediately forgot. And she was telling me that thing I had to tell to my mom. So when I woke up in this life, I called my mom and I told her about her. And then 2 weeks later, I see her Instagram and I saw her, and she was a Lemurian shaman. So then there's been a lot of things that, that have connected me through to Lemuria. And then what I've learned about that past life is that it was a very spiritually advanced civilization. So what that has given me is this confidence in a way to really dive deeper into spirituality, because for a while I felt very self-conscious and fearful to dive deeper into these concepts, not even dive deeper, and to really talk about it publicly. It always felt like it was something that I needed to guard, and it was just for myself. And that has given me that. A lot of my friends, they keep asking me like, why are you not like figuring out more? Like what were you there? I've had a couple more visualizations in which some of them I've experienced fear and pain, which is interesting. It's not only, you know, like the joyful things, I've also experienced in the remembrance some painful things. But I tell them, it's really, for me, it's really not about exactly what happened, but what is giving me in this specific lifetime. And I feel like it has given me confidence to really explore and share my spiritual journey. And many more things, but I find that has been the huge gift that I've got from connecting with that past life for sure.
Beautiful. And and it's so fascinating that so many of us, we have like these experiences, and you're talking about Lemuria, and like so many people talk about Lemuria and having those experiences. Not everybody can lie, right? So it means that there is something to it. There is something that, although yes, we don't want to like reach conclusions and say that okay, this is what it is, but at least like having that open exploration of this area is so important. And yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think that to what you just said, I think that that's why, to me, my approach to it is not like what facts am I getting from like this remembrance, because I honestly, that's not even how I think. Like, even in this lifetime, like I don't keep track of facts. Like my husband is always asking me for evidence for things, and I'm like, I have no idea. I just know it. It's really more about how is it changing me of course, in a more expansive way. And how can I really use this and put it to service? So that's really what it has given me. So I'm really excited for anyone that joins your workshop. I think I'm actually may join because I saw the dates and I was like, I think this is going to work.
Would love to have you there,
yeah, just because, again, like you said, I am an explorer. I'm like Dora the Explorer because I really love all of these concepts. And it's really fascinating. And I think, like you said, there are many benefits to it. As long as we don't attach to it from a place that is not, expansive, there's always good things that we can take out of them.
Absolutely. There's always I would definitely encourage even those who are skeptical, and I understand I understand your skepticism, but like just being open to that and can give a lot of benefits, and will open up something that you might not have ever explored. And I think that openness is very important. And also, like, regarding the whole discussion we had today about the emotions and the heart, like just the openness to, like, the open heart to explore these different things, and that is so important. And usually the mind, and that's why I absolutely love the title of your podcast, because it is usually we try to think from the mind that okay, this is right or this is wrong, and should I do this or should I not do this? But the heart just trusts that the heart knows how to trust. And so it would trust and it would plunge into, exploring something openly. Although it knows that, it is not fearful. The mind is fearful. It is not afraid of even getting hurt in the process. So I think that's the power of the heart. And yeah, that's really, really powerful what you're doing with this podcast.
You answered my question, which was, how do you think this is tapping into the wisdom of the heart? But you just beautifully answered that question. Another question that I had is, what do you think the world needs more of right now?
It's a very good question. I feel the world needs a real connection. There is a lot of artificial connection today, as you might know, and like this artificial connection is more through dating apps or through social media, or through, although these are wonderful things, but I feel real connection is like being together in person. Like this kind of conversation is halfway there to that real in person conversation, but and it's much more valuable than just like listening to something that is not active, listening to an old course or listening to. And that's why I do live workshops now, because I really like doing things live and connecting live, and that I feel is a real connection versus like using some old course to learn some concepts, or watching some documentary. And all those are wonderful things, but I feel we need more of interaction in the world. Like COVID really kind of created a disconnection, and with all the technology today, it has become convenient. It's convenient for us right now to like sit in our homes and have this conversation, but it's when you really are in the presence of a person, you feel that energy, and you're really like experiencing that joy of being together, and you're talking and you are exploring things together. And so I feel that we need to get back to where we were. Technology has been really beneficial to us, but technology also has its downsides, and it is affecting people. I think a lot of, although I talk about solitude, but there is a difference between loneliness and solitude. Like solitude is more empowering. Solitude is more like a choice that I need to spend time with myself to become aware of myself. But loneliness is where I am. An example of that is that I'm sitting on my couch, I'm texting, I'm watching Netflix, eating a burger, and I'm not going out. I'm not I'm not in nature. I'm not connecting to others, sharing love with others, meeting my friends, or anything like that. And that is something we need to get back to. And we have to make sure that we use technology for benefit the way we are using right now, and not let it consume us to the extent that we become totally disconnected from the world. And especially with this rise in artificial intelligence, we really need to get back to like these in-person connections, and retreats maybe, or I think retreats are a great way to like to connect in person and have that real connection. So yeah, a real connection.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely love that. And I think that the addition, which you mentioned, the connection with nature,
Yeah.
which is to me, when I started to connect with nature, that's when I got the hint that I needed to connect with humans too.
Yeah.
I first connected to nature, and then she was like, you need to connect to people. Um, so yeah, I think those connections are incredibly important. I just came back from a retreat, and it's like the perfect time to say yes. Like the one thing we kept repeating the whole weekend, 4 days, was we need more of these containers. We need more of these places in which we're connecting in person and we're experiencing everything that we're experiencing together.
Yeah.
Technology is great, and it has, like you said, beautiful gifts, but definitely that in-person connection is, it's like nothing else.
Absolutely.
Then the last question that I'm going to ask you is, what do you think love is?
Love is inversely proportional to ego. That's kind of a mathematical answer. Like the more ego I have, the more I feel separate from others, the more I feel pride about myself, the more I feel that that I should benefit from this relationship or something like that, and what am I getting out of this relationship. That kind of affects love, and that is usually created by the mind. Like it is created by the brain more than the heart. The brain, I'll give an example here, like for example, going on a date. And like in this case, I'm talking about a romantic relationship or a romantic love, although love has different forms. But if I'm going on a date, there are two ways I can approach the date. I can approach the date from a place of, okay, do I like this person? And this is how most dates are to date. Okay, do I like this person? How much money this person has, how successful this person is. Can this person make me laugh? What can this person do for me? We don't ever think about what is the connection here? We always think about what we want out of that date. And that is the mind, that is the ego that is speaking. Versus if I let go of all these wanting and expectations and needs of the ego, and I totally become present with this person, and I'm not in the future, because all these are future questions, like what will I get? But if I let go of the future and I totally allow myself to be fully present and immerse myself with this person, the boundaries of the ego dissolve, the heart opens, and there is just oneness. There is like two souls merging with each other. There is a union of souls that happens. And then it is not about like what I want, then it is about, you know, what is the experience here in this moment? What is that experience? What are we together experiencing? And it's more of a like a feeling than it is about like all those intellectual needs or needs of the mind. uh, kind of what reminds me of what Maya Angelou said, that it does not matter what someone says. What matters is how they make you feel. And this applies both ways. Like, am I making the other person feel, and how the other person is making me feel? But at the end of it, how together are we? Like, kind of that s- dissolving of the separateness and the ego, and how we are experiencing this uh, situation and this date or this moment together. So it happens when the ego dissolves and the heart opens.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to the very first thing you said, because when you were saying it, I was seeing a visual of the mathematical equation.
Okay.
So I really want to see it. I want to write it down. Saqib, thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for all of the work that you do. Where can people find you? And we've talked about the workshop that you're offering soon, but you have many more things in Insight Timer, on your website. So please share with people so they can find you.
Absolutely. So most of my work is on the Insight Timer app. So they can download Insight Timer, go to my profile, search Saqib Rizvi, and they will find my profile. They can also go through the website, which is insighttimer.com /Saqib Rizvi for my first and last name. And I have a website, which is saqibrizvi.com. And for the upcoming workshop on accessing past lives, it's present on the website, the link, but they can also type in saqibrizvi.com /APL, which is the initials for accessing past lives.
Awesome. We'll have the links on the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Sakib. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And
my pleasure, totally.
Good luck with everything, although you don't need it. But yeah, I hope many people join this amazing workshop and they experience all of the benefits from it.
I definitely needed it. Thank you for that. And it was a very enjoyable conversation. I absolutely loved it. And I think my heart is feeling more open. So I think the purpose of this podcast is fulfilled. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sakib.
Take care.
So I really hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation 2 questions that have been the drivers for the topics of the podcast and the episodes and the guests that I'm having in this podcast. Who am I and what does my heart have to do with this are questions that are driving me and that have been driving me for a while. My own spiritual journey really has been driven by these 2 questions. And I feel like a lot of the topics that we covered today in this conversation were really pointing us towards this exploration. And that to me is what is fun about this process: exploring, discovering, and realizing that there are things that resonate with me and others that don't really resonate with me at the moment. I have actually read many things at the beginning of my journey in this spiritual path that I didn't really feel too connected with. And now they have been coming back to me. So it's always a great training and practice to allow things to be. Any information that comes to us, if we can practice allowing them to exist without rejecting them immediately, is an amazing practice to stay open, to allow our hearts to be open, to allow our minds to be open to new possibilities. So I really hope that there's something in this podcast that you enjoyed. If you find anything beneficial and you think that anyone you know could find it the same way, please share this podcast. Help us all start this journey of self-discovery and finding who we are, so we can really expand and grow into that which our soul is calling us to do. I'll see you next week.